What's poppin', y'all? It looks like Charlamagne might be living proof of that old saying. It takes about 20 years to build a solid reputation, but you can destroy it all in just 20 minutes. Maybe we need to update that to 20 days, because he is out here metaphorically nailing himself to the cross for none other than Jay-Z, and we have some wild new developments to get into. So obviously, this whole thing kicked off months ago when Charlamagne was allegedly warning or notifying academics about things that were supposedly coming down the pipeline against him. Then Academics TV side account launched a full-on onslaught against Charlamagne, digging up old accusations and putting them front and center for everyone to see. But more recently, the two have been attempting to patch things up, with Academics seemingly being the one making more of an effort on that front. And while Academics was out in Miami, he spoke about how strange it felt that Charlamagne was trying to have a conversation with him, but was specifically avoiding doing it live and on the record in front of an audience.
Been like trying to all right, let's find the next way to, kind of become like a bigger commentator and a bigger figure. And it's politics. Like Charlamagne's a political, you get what I'm saying? But he wouldn't be saying nothing to me if it was I was like super pro-Democrat. But because I'm not super pro-Democrat, that's why he came with his thing that he had no proof of. I'm like, yo, come on, bro. Come on. You feel what I'm saying? Yo, the craziest thing too, when I started hearing even Charlamagne talk about, Charlamagne talk about like steak. I'm like, yo, bro, this is what I'm saying. Charlamagne got like, yo, let's sit down. We got to do it on both our platforms. Let's sit down and really talk about it all. Because I want to look Charlamagne in his eyes and say, how you got so much opinion about steak, or what you think steak is doing, or what you think crypto gambling is, or whatever you think it is, but you showed up there for Jay-Z when he was about to get a bid for the casino in Times Square, and you gave a speech on his behalf. I'm listening to this new podcast. Charlamagne's like, yo, this is influencing the kids. You tried to get a casino in the middle of Times Square. Bruh, stop it, bro. We gonna have to, bro. I'm telling you, I'm looking at him like, yo, it was music to my ears when Charlamagne said, nah, we gotta talk about it. I've been trying to talk about it. You don't gotta, I want to talk publicly because I don't have no secrets with nobody. Charlamagne gave a speech. Yo, imagine me giving a steak speech. Yo, hey, listen. Yo, Charlamagne gave a speech, gang. Now he's over here talking about, oh, the kids is getting influenced by.
Now this is hypocrisy at its finest, because keep in mind, Charlamagne was big on all that mental health awareness content for a while. I don't know what happened to that messaging. He was heavily into the therapy conversation and encouraging people to seek help. But here's the thing. When you're out here lobbying and speaking on behalf of a casino, I would think that does a whole lot more damage to people's mental health than it does any good. I don't think anybody has ever walked out of a casino and felt like their mental health had genuinely improved. Maybe they felt a temporary rush of excitement if they won something, but over a long period of time, casinos and therapy are working in opposite directions. So that's just a layer of hypocrisy on Charlamagne's part that is hard to overlook. But what does all of this actually tell us? Well, we learned a whole lot more when Wayno, who has been strongly affiliated with Roc Nation for over 20 years and has consistently shown favorable leanings toward Jay-Z without being what I would call a pure glazer, came forward with a revelation that genuinely shocked people. He revealed that Charlamagne was not actually over there speaking on Jay-Z's behalf for the casino situation. He was speaking on his own behalf because he had a direct financial interest in it himself, and nobody knew that. That changes the entire picture. Then Trap Lord Ross went through and reviewed some of the specific things Charlamagne had been saying publicly about the casino, and I honestly cannot believe I missed this the first time around. We knew he was vocal about wanting Jay-Z to get the casino approved, but looking back at those comments now with the full context we have today, it is genuinely hilarious, especially given the now documented Roc Nation and Charlamagne financial affiliation, because they keep coming at academics with attacks about politics, crypto, and casino connections. Meanwhile, Charlamagne's own podcast partner was sponsored by a crypto casino. Then he starts bringing up Polymarket out of nowhere. What does Polymarket have to do with any of this? Playboy Maxi did a sponsored segment with Polymarket. Francis Ngannou walked out to his most recent fight wearing a massive Polymarket chain. This was at that Netflix boxing event hosted by Jake Paul. So everybody is connected to Polymarket in some way at this point, what exactly is the argument here? And whatever's going on with that has absolutely nothing to do with academics. This came right after the first attack they tried to launch, which was about him allegedly getting paid by political interests, when the reality was he was simply receiving checks for streaming on Rumble. Like, what is this nonsense? And on top of all of that, we were getting some very Birdman-like energy from Charlamagne when this situation was first heating up.
One gaming license to New York City, and Hove wants that license.
Yeah, that needs to happen. I mean, that has to happen. Like in the letter, Rock Nation states there's no...
That needs to happen. Look at him rubbing his hands together like Birdman. He thinking he getting paid already. He already spent the money in his head. Yeah, that needs to happen, man. That needs to happen. That needs... Let me just put a little something in your drink. Yeah, all the drinks that you could spike at this casino.
No better location for a Caesars Palace entertainment destination in Times Square. And I couldn't agree more. Because the reality is there's nothing in Times Square right now. Like the biggest attraction.
There's nothing in Times Square. Don't get me pissed off. Times Square. There's nothing in... Are you kidding me? Do you think we're dumb? This guy thinks we're dumb. This guy thinks we're dummies. This guy thinks we're dummies. There's no... This man just said there's nothing in Times Square. There's not that what the f are you talking about? Popeyes. There's nothing in time. There ain't nothing in Times Square. There ain't nothing in Times Square. Times Square ain't what? Ain't nothing to do in Times Square. Ain't jack shit. I ain't taken one step. AP Swatch. Ain't ain't nothing going on down here. There's more going on in Bognor Regis, where I'm from. Ain't nothing. Couldn't get tickets to nothing in Times Square. I'm bored. Ain't nothing to do in here. What's nothing to look at. I'm so unstimulated right now. I'm so bored. What is this guy? Is a idiot? No, he's not an idiot. He's a liar.
Now, this is genuinely hilarious. Watching him talk about how Times Square needs this casino is something else entirely. First of all, what does Charlamagne know about what Times Square or New York City actually needs? Charlamagne is from Charleston, South Carolina. The man is from South Carolina. He did not even move to New York until he was well over 30 years old. So you cannot even make the argument that he grew up there, or that he spent his formative years in the city, or that he went to college in New York and developed a real connection to the place. None of that applies here. This is a guy who came to New York as a fully grown adult and was living in New Jersey at the time. And from what I understand, he may still be living in New Jersey. So this man is not even living in New York City, and he's out here telling everybody that this is what New York needs. The audacity of that is genuinely something. And then Trap Lord Ross had the funniest observation about this whole thing. He pointed out that Times Square is literally one of the most packed and overwhelming places on the entire planet. Everyone who actually lives in New York avoids Times Square specifically because you cannot put your foot anywhere without being surrounded by tourists all year round. It is one of the biggest tourist destinations in the world. There is everything you could want in Times Square already. The only thing Times Square is missing, apparently, is a casino. And then the craziest part of all is when you watch this next segment of Charlamagne talking about it, it genuinely sounds like he is reading directly from a paid advertisement.
Somebody in New York that could get a casino license that could attract a diverse crowd of people from all over the world that Sean Carter would.
Now the proposal, as Charlamagne said, they want to give back to all surrounding businesses. They want to commit.
I'm confused because where's the ad disclosure? This sounds like an ad to me, but I ain't seen any ad disclosure. I ain't seen nothing to say advert, sponsored content, equity owner. I'm not sure because the FTC said that you got to disclose this, but I'm not seeing any ad disclosure. I didn't start the video. I said this is paid product placement. This video is still in violation of the FTC guidelines.
Made $115 million for diverse theater programs.
We've heard Charlamagne speak naturally and conversationally plenty of times, but the way he was talking about this was something completely different. Saying things like, nobody in the world could bring people in the way Sean Carter would. Hold on. There are plenty of other people with comparable or even greater global pull than Jay-Z, and I say this with full respect, but Jay-Z is not as universally massive on a global scale as some people seem to believe. 50 Cent would arguably be a better draw. You could make a strong case that Curtis Jackson would do a more effective job pulling in a truly global audience to a casino in New York than Jay-Z would. But the way Charlamagne was delivering these lines, it genuinely sounded like he was reading directly from a script or ad copy that someone handed him. And of course, Trap Lord Ross pointed out the obvious issue that Charlamagne never disclosed his financial interest in this casino deal as required under FTC guidelines, which we had already learned about from Wayno. But then academics came back with new material that was actually substantive and damaging, presenting the discovery that Charlamagne was in fact directly and formally tied to Roc Nation, with a documented financial stake in this casino project actually happening.
Anything, but I see Roc Nation. Roc Nation has identified no direct or indirect conflicts or perceived conflicts of interest to exist with respect to this proposal. What is this telling me now? Roc Nation is one of the people who has financial interest if this goes through. But what does this got to do with Charlamagne? So I go down and I say, man, maybe this little birdie that's from Roc Nation who told me, just like, he's just trying to gaslight me. Everybody's gaslighting Big Act now, okay? I see what's going on. They're all gaslighting Big Act. Then I click here. Under Roc Nation, it reads these names: Sean Carter, Desiree Perez, Jana Fleshman, Angela Rye, Alicia Keys, and that's not my mother media goat, Leonard McKelvey, a.k.a. Charlamagne, not under the Roc Nation banner. No, we got him, y'all. We got him, y'all. Chat, I refreshed this page 40 times. I couldn't believe it. No. I refreshed this 40 times, chat. I couldn't believe it. Under Roc Nation, Leonard McKelvey, a.k.a. it says known professionally as Charlamagne Tha God, according to how they tried to submit this to the New York State government, they claim that Leonard McKelvey was a part of whatever Roc Nation was going to do.
So this development genuinely changes a lot of things, because Charlamagne was out here trying to tell academics that Jay-Z wasn't even paying attention to him. Let's think about how absurd that actually is. Jay-Z and Charlamagne are referencing Wall Street Journal articles and Vibe magazine pieces, acting like those are the only media outlets that matter. Meanwhile, Complex magazine, which is something people in their own circles absolutely pay attention to, has ranked academics as the #1 or #2 most influential voice in this space for the past 3 years straight. So you're genuinely trying to tell us that Kendrick Lamar and Drake, both of whom mentioned academics directly during one of the biggest rap beefs in recent memory, were paying attention, but Jay-Z somehow is not? Come on, that argument doesn't hold up for a single second. And here's what makes it even more insulting. Jay-Z noticed people making comments about his hair and responded by dropping a 7-minute hair care routine. But we're supposed to believe this same man has no awareness of what academics is doing? Charlamagne is essentially treating the audience like they're too naive to see through this, and that's what genuinely irritates me about this whole situation. He thinks people will just accept whatever he tells them without thinking critically about it. Think about it this way. Elon Musk is a trillionaire. He runs SpaceX, Tesla, X, and about 50 other ventures simultaneously, a cognitive workload that should theoretically leave him with almost no free time. And yet, this man is replying to random accounts on X in real time. Meanwhile, we're supposed to believe Jay-Z, who is running a comparatively smaller operation, has no idea what's happening with one of the most talked about voices in hip-hop media? Nobody should be buying that story. And Michael Rubin is another example. These billionaires are plugged into everything happening at every level of the culture because it is literally in their best interest to be. Jay-Z specifically needed public support and votes for this casino bid to move forward. You cannot be trying to influence policy and win public approval while simultaneously claiming you don't care about or pay attention to public sentiment. The reason Jay-Z got the NFL deal was that he had documented clout and cultural influence over a specific demographic. The reason Tidal got acquired and he landed a board seat at Square is because of that same influence. His entire business model depends on understanding and maintaining his connection to public perception. The idea that he's somehow checked out from what's happening in the culture is not a serious argument. Now, some people will say this casino filing information was already public record, and technically that's true. It is on the New York government website. But there is a massive difference between something being publicly accessible and something being widely known. Nobody knew to look for it. Nobody thought to search there. And most people had absolutely no idea this was the case. Charlamagne has been actively pretending he has no real financial or organizational ties to Jay-Z and Roc Nation, while the paperwork tells a completely different story. And we already know Roc Nation has had direct issues with academics. Specifically, he has been subpoenaed. There have been court proceedings. They have tried to investigate his connections to Drake. Roc Nation's CEO Desiree Perez runs the organization day to day, and she famously cannot stand 6ix9ine. Academics is publicly close with 6ix9ine, so of course that animosity extends to academics by association. And on top of that, academics' commentary has consistently created friction around Megan Thee Stallion, who was supposed to be one of Roc Nation's biggest financial assets. So yes, there are real and documented reasons why Roc Nation has problems with academics, and Charlamagne is right in the middle of all of it, while pretending he's just an innocent observer, passing along friendly warnings. And for a man who has built his entire public brand around being for the people and championing mental health awareness, lobbying for a casino in the middle of Times Square is a genuinely difficult position to defend. Casinos do not improve communities. They do not improve mental health outcomes. A casino dropping into the middle of Times Square would bring gambling addiction, increased crime, robbery, intoxicated crowds, and everything that comes with concentrating that kind of activity in one of the most densely populated tourist areas on the planet. We don't even need to look far for examples. The Hard Rock in Florida saw a shooting incident involving Offset and Lil TJ, and those are celebrities with security details. Now imagine what that environment looks like for everyday people who live and work in that area. The residents who would actually be affected by this casino said no, and the bid ultimately went elsewhere. From what I understand, Nas may have ended up winning that license. I can only imagine how Jay-Z felt about that outcome. And if Charlamagne wanted to make an argument about economic development and job creation, the Amazon warehouse situation years ago would have been an interesting test of consistency. Amazon was looking to bring a massive facility in Queens, which would have created substantial employment without any of the social costs that come attached to a casino. AOC, who was actually from New York and represents constituents who would be directly affected, opposed it for various reasons. I honestly don't know where Charlamagne stood on that one. But a casino and an Amazon warehouse are not remotely comparable in terms of community impact, and anyone arguing otherwise is not being straight with their audience. The name Charlamagne chose for himself is telling on its own. He named himself after a medieval emperor and calls himself Charlamagne Tha God. It's almost like he built that persona specifically to communicate that he sees himself as operating above the average person, and that the average person is simply going to believe whatever he presents to them without asking questions. But this information is out there now, and I genuinely do not think he is going to sit down and have this conversation with academics on live camera where both sides are equally visible and equally accountable. He seems scattered right now. He doesn't appear to know how to respond in a way that doesn't dig the hole deeper. And here's the thing that academics did brilliantly. He essentially said stop with the back and forth games and just have the conversation publicly. Lupe Fiasco is out here having live conversations with his critics and people who are coming at him considerably harder than academics ever would come at someone he genuinely looked up to. The fact that Charlamagne is avoiding a public conversation while reaching out privately tells you everything about where his confidence level actually is on this. His reputation, at least with the general public, has taken a real and serious hit from this. Even people who support Charlamagne have to look at this situation honestly and acknowledge that he never disclosed his financial interest in this casino project to his audience. That is a fundamental breach of trust. It is exactly like if Logan Paul were constantly promoting Prime without anyone knowing he had an ownership stake in it, or Jake Paul shilling a betting platform without disclosing his financial involvement. The moment that information comes out, everything he said on the subject has to be re-examined through a completely different lens, and the mental health angle makes it even more uncomfortable. Here is a man who built a significant part of his public identity around mental health advocacy, while simultaneously having a financial interest in a casino being built in one of the most visited places in the country. I genuinely do not see what credible ground Charlamagne has left to stand on when this conversation finally gets addressed publicly. We will have to see how he responds when he can no longer avoid it. Let me know what you all think in the comments below.